Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment or two. I do want to welcome you to the professional webinar series. While the room is getting populated and everybody's coming online, if you would in the chat box, go ahead and um, put where you're from, and so that we can see what parts of the state are represented. And we'll get started in just a moment. See, we've got North Florida, we've got South Florida, we got Central Florida. We've got good representation from certainly all around the state at this point in time. All right. Well, it is, looks like it's 10:01. It looks like most of the people have entered the room. So we'll go ahead and get started. Um, Good morning. I'm Tom Wickman, the Assistant Director of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, and I'd like to welcome you to the Florida Friendly Landscaping Professional Webinar Series. Today's webinar is the new era of ornamental perennial peanut with Dr. Leynar Leyton. Your microphones have been muted. We'll be closing the chat feature that you're using right now in just a few minutes. But please make sure that you put questions, any questions that you have during the session, put those in the Q&A box, and we'll take them at the end of the presentation. This webinar is approved for 1 FFLCP, LIAF, FDAX, LF, LCLM, LLO, and CLO, DBPR, LA and CAM, and 1 FNGLA CEU. There's a $15 administration fee to receive a certificate for continuing education. I'll put a link in the chat box to make payment for the certificate if you've not already done so. We'll submit for the CEUs to the licensing agency on Friday, so make sure if you want the CEU to make your payment by the end of the day today. This is part of a monthly webinar series held on the second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Our next regularly scheduled webinar will be April 8th with Dr. Kevin Kenworthy talking about new turfgrass varieties and mixed species turf update. Also, you'll see a survey invitation pop up, so please take a moment to fill out that survey. Let us know the topics that are interesting to you so that as we plan upcoming sessions, we can make sure to get topics that you are interested in. And with that, without any further delay, let me turn the floor over to Mark Celestin to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Florida Friendly Landscaping Professional Webinar Series. My name is Mark Celestin, and I am the training coordinator for the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. We're thrilled to have each and every one of you all join us for this webinar on the topic of the new era of ornamental perennial peanut, presented by our very own Dr. Leyton Leynar, Assistant Professor. Dr. Leyton specializes in breeding and genetics of landscape plants with a focus on underutilized native plants. The goal of his program is to develop resilient ornamental plants for the landscape with drought and heat tolerance, improved landscape and production performance, enhanced ecosystem services, and sterility. He also directs the Gary Knox Gardens of the Big Bend, where he leads initiatives on increasing urban horticulture awareness, plant conservation, and trail of new plant varieties. Please, everyone, welcome Dr. Leynar Leyton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. I'm very excited to talk about perennial peanut, and it's a new crop for me. But it's a really cool plant. So I hope after today you get a new understanding of this, in my opinion, very cool plant for the landscape. So as a small agenda for today, give me a minute. There we go. As a little agenda for today, I'm going to start with what is perennial peanut, then move forward to are all perennial peanuts the same? And I think that's a very good question to ask to understand perennial peanut. Then move forward to the ornamental uses, the growing conditions, and I'm going to end with new varieties that we are hope to release and be able to use by the end of this year. So a little bit about myself. I started in March of last year. I'm located at the North Florida Research and Education Center. As Mark said, I'm assistant professor in environmental horticulture. I'm an ornamental plant breeder. I work with native plants, with perennial peanut. I'm the extension specialist for native plants and perennial peanut in the state. And I also direct the gardens of the Big Bang. That is a small botanical garden that we have here on campus. I have a 60% extension and 40% research, so that's my appointment. Let's start with what is perennial peanut. So perennial peanut was introduced to Florida in 1936 as a forage crop. It's an umbrella term for two different species, Arachis glabrata and Arachis petoi. And a little further in the presentation, I'm gonna talk to you about the difference between these two species. It's native to Brazil, Paraguay, and Colombia. Mainly is adapted to tropical and subtropical climates. So our climate here in Florida, it's perfect for perennial peanut. Is perennial, as the word says, and that will be important because resists grazing. So you can see here in this picture, all these happy cows are eating perennial peanut, that is the yellow flowers. It also resists, it's a high quality hay, it's high in protein, livestock loved it, and used as a hay crop, and it can resist grazing, so it can resist being basically squished by all this heavy weight of cows. It has no problem with it. And it's an alfalfa alternative in Florida. So alfalfa is a cold season crop, so it doesn't perform that well here in Florida. That's why perennial peanut was introduced. Perennial peanut has a high content of protein in their leaves. That's why it makes a very high quality protein. And speaking of peanut, you should not mix or make the confusion about what is annual peanut, that is the peanut that we eat, for boiled peanuts or just to eat like roasted peanuts. That's annual peanut. So this plant will die every year after the crop is done, and that is Arachis hypogea. Some people get confused because there's also a thing called peanut hay that peanut growers will cut all the vegetation of their peanut plants and sell it as hay. That's why we need to use the word perennial peanut before the word hay when we're talking about perennial peanut hay. As I say, it has high quality, high in protein. And what things that we care about, at least I care about, attracts pollinators, has low insect and pest incidence with the right cultivar, and also it's a legume. So why is a legume, for some of you that are maybe wondering? So legume are plants from the bean family, and they have this very cool characteristic that I don't know if you can see here, but if I look my laser here, just give me a minute. Okay, so these plants will have these nodules on the roots that will be host for bacteria, and that bacteria will fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. So it's a symbiotic relationship between the legume plants and these little bacteria, where the plants give it a very cozy nodule to live in and give the nutrients and water, and the bacteria give nutrient to the plants. As we all know, nitrogen is a major nutrient for plants to grow. So these nodules host this bacteria, the bacteria gets food, and the bacteria gets nitrogen to the plants. So it's a very good symbiotic relationship, and that's what is very cool about legumes. Now, perennial peanut is not the only legume. We also have some native species that are very examples of legumes. For example, this is one of my favorites, false indigo or Amorpha fructicosa. Beautiful shrub, has the very typical leaves of a legume with these very long purple flowers. Another great example of a legume is the eastern redbud, Cercis canadiensis. We all love this tree, also as a legume. And finally, but not at least, powder puff mimosa, Mimosa striculosa, also is a legume. So this is a very nice ground cover. Just be mindful that mimosa, as I call it, likes to walk. So if you are not in control of your mimosa in your garden, it might take over it. But also it's a legume, so it's very good. Coming back to the perennial peanut, are all the perennial peanuts the same? And the answer is no, there are different species that we'll talk about. So we have rhizome species, that is going to be Arachis glabrata, and a stoloniferous species, that is Arachis pentoi. One of the problems that I've seen in the industry right now is that we use the word perennial peanut indifferently to talk about these two species, and they do have very major differences. So let's talk about them. Well, the first one, as the name says, the rhizome types have rhizomes, and the stoloniferous types have stolons. This would be also the rhizome types will have orange flowers. In contrast, the stoloniferous type have yellow flowers. Also, rhizome types are slow growers, around 6 inches per season, and the stoloniferous type grow faster. Rhizome types are drought resistant, and the stoloniferous type are only tolerant. I've seen rhizome perennial peanut being super drought resistant. That's what I use the word resistant. I had a pot in the summer that it didn't get water for 4 to 5 days in a greenhouse at 90 degrees. We look at the plant, it looked dead. We watered it came back to life. So rhizome types are very, very drought resistant, very tough plants. Also, rhizome types does not produce seeds, and the stoloniferous type rarely produce seeds, but they're able to produce seeds. So let's see some pictures. Here you have 2 pictures of the rhizoma and the stoloniferous type. Just look that make sure to look in the rhizoma side that we have yellow gold flowers, the stem is thinner, and the leaves are more pointy. In the stoloniferous type, they're going to have yellow flowers and have thicker stems and more around the leaf. I have better pictures. So this is, if you're thinking what it is, this is rhizoma type. You can see the leaves are pointy, the stems are more thin, and these will be a stoloniferous type. This is the stolon. The leaves are rounded. Also, the color is a little different in the leaves. For the stoloniferous type, that there is Arachis pentoi, that is this one, the color will be more this light green, more like chartreuse color that some people like. That's another picture of the stolon, and that's the yellow flower. So those are the very key difference that you can easily identify these varieties when you try to buy them. And let's talk about the rhizomes. So the rhizomes is what give the stoloniferous types this very good resilient characteristic. So rhizomes are, you've seen some examples, like for example, this picture is bamboo. I'm pretty sure you are familiar with rhizomes, so just put some examples. Ginger is another example that have rhizomes, mint, and perennial peanut. So here I have a picture of the cultivar ecoturf. That is a rhizome type. That's the root system of an ecoturf in the ground. All those very long roots that you see there are rhizomes, and they store nutrients, energy, and water. So we talked about a little bit before that this rhizome types, they are slow growers. And the fact that they are slow growers is because, you might not see it much above ground, but these plants are growing rhizomes underground that are storing nutrients, energy, so starch and water. So the plant is not growing the green part, they're also growing the roots. That's why they make it a more slow grower. But there are also many cultivar differences. So we talk that perennial peanut is used mainly as a hay crop. So you will find, for example, Tito, peas, or Arbrook, or Ona 33 or Latitude 34. All those are hay types, and those are the ones that you do not want for your garden. These types are very high growers, so they will be taller than 14 inches in some cases. They love to put biomass and to grow, so they're gonna be very fast growers. You can, harvest them 2-3 times a season. So they're very good for hay producers, but they are not very good for your garden. We do have some dual uses like EcoTurf. So EcoTurf will be around 10 inches tall, maybe a little bit lower than, smaller than that. But it also can be used as hay, but it's beautifully when it's used as ornamental. And we do have some ornamentals available. So we have cowboy, pointy leaves, and waxy leaves. For the stoloniferous type, we only have a few cultivars available in the US, and you probably might have heard of some of these. They're mainly used for ornamental uses. We have Golden Glory and Amarillo. So I've read online that some people call perennial peanut grass peanut. And if you find grass peanut, will probably be Golden Glory or Amarillo. Now, we also talk that perennial peanut does not produce seeds, and the stoloniferous type might produce seeds. So I also have seen online people selling perennial peanut seed that is usually Golden Glory and Amarillo, but be mindful that there is not production of seed for perennial peanut in the US. That's not existent right now. So all the seeds that you can get will be from overseas or from another country. Now, we are not allowed to import any perennial peanut seed to the United States, basically for the fear that they might have contain some diseases or viruses that we don't have here in the United States that may affect the annual peanut producers. So bottom line, do not buy seeds of perennial peanut or for any peanut of that matter online, because that can bring diseases that we don't have here and will affect all the peanut growers and producers. Now, this is a very interesting graph. You can see here the yield per year that you can obtain of some of these varieties. So for example, for a hay type like Tito, that is the bottom one, you can get 5 tons of biomass in a year for that plant. So these plants produce a ton of biomass. They're super tall, 19 centimeters. And for example, here below ground, they also can produce about 2.5 tons of biomass. So these plants love to grow and to produce this biomass for the hay types. That's why you don't want them in your garden. Now let's talk about ornamental uses. So perennial peanut can be used mainly for utility grass or median. So it's perfect for these very small pieces of land that you want grass, but you don't want to maintain, basically in about mowing. So it will work perfectly for parking lots, driveways. For example, this is Tallahassee. This is Appalachian Parkway. You can see all the medians of that building in the back is the state capitol. And you can see all this green material here in the median that looks like grass. But if you look closer, the grass have flowers. So that's not grass, that's perennial peanut. And that, I'm 90% sure that is EcoTurf. So you see it works pretty well in these type of situations. Also, I want to introduce the concept of living mulch, that you can use perennial peanut in all the areas that are sunny and that you're using mulch. You can put perennial peanut in those areas and will perform perfect as a mulch. Just it's going to be a living plant. So it works perfectly for those areas. As we talk, it's a legume, so it will fix nitrogen in the soil. It will improve that soil and will act as the perfect mulch. But the main use that you might be familiar about is as a turf replacement or alternative. This is a field of ecoturf, and it works pretty well if that's what you're looking for also. Now let's talk about growing conditions for Rhizoma perennial peanut. That's what RPP stands for. So as I say, I'm gonna focus on the rhizome types because I believe that those are the best types for our climates. Soloniferous types do not perform very well for us. If you live in Miami or in South Florida, I'll say go ahead, plant soloniferous types like Pentoi or Golden Glory or Amarillo. But if you are anywhere else northern than Miami, I'm sorry to tell you that it won't perform very well. So let's stick to rhizome perennial peanut. So let's talk about soil and climate requirements that this plant needs. It's hardy to zone 8A, so it covers all the state of Florida, even half of the state of Georgia. It likes sandy soils. It has very low and no fertilizer requirements. And all it requires irrigation establishment here in the, I'll say Southeast US. If you're in a more dry area, you might need a little bit of irrigation. But now that's what is typical being told, but I believe that the range of growing of perennial peanut is a little bit broad. That's on 8A. Basically, perennial peanut, we will die if the soil temperature goes below 32 Fahrenheit. That only is true in very northern states. Like I did my PhD at Georgia, and we only saw soil temperatures below 32 Fahrenheit in the most northern part of the state. So if you live in coastal areas, when it doesn't get that cold, perennial peanut will survive perfectly. For type of soils, sandy soil is what it prefers, but it also tolerates heavier soils. The only consequence of that is gonna grow a little bit slower. So it's not an issue. For low fertilizer requirements, we don't have very conclusive data about the fertilizer recommendations for perennial peanut. I'll say in the state of Florida, that's true. It doesn't require too much fertilizer, but in some cases might need some micronutrients just to keep that very deep green in their leaves. And irrigation early at establishment, as I said, only in the Southeast US. You do want to water it when you establish to make sure that the plant don't suffer. Remember that when you planted it, usually the plant will use the resources that have in that rhizome. So you may be lucky that we have a very wet spring, so you don't need very much water. But if we get some drought periods, that rhizome, the plant will use all the resources on that rhizome to keep alive. But if the conditions don't improve, the plant probably will suffer and die. For mowing requirements, that is what more people like about perennial peanut because they say that you don't have to mow it. Well, that's partially true. You don't need to mow it like at all if you don't want, but if you mow it, it will improve their appearance. So what we recommend, usually one mowing after winter dormancy. So for us, for example, here in North Florida, perennial peanut will get dormant during the winter, so it will like die to the ground. So that's the perfect time when it start coming back. You know, like right now, perennial peanut is just coming out of the ground, is to go in and mow it as a weed control asset, but also to get rid of all this dead material that will be above the ground. And also, if you mow it, that will increase flowering after the perennial peanut has coming out of the ground. So we usually recommend two mowings a year, one in July and one in November. So you have to mow your perennial peanut 3 times a year. That sounds good for some people. It's way better than turfgrass. So one after winter dormancy, one in July and one in November. That's what we recommend for mowing. And also some people, that should not be there, but yeah, let's talk about establishment. So most people say that you should plant, the recommendation is plant one plant every 2 foot centers for establishments. So you can also use sprigs. That sprigs is mainly the rhizomes that you spread in the ground and you just cover them with a little bit of soil, or just compress them into the soil. That's what I was talking about. Plants, if you are gonna plant, if you're planting plants, recommendation is plant them 2 feet apart. I think if you want a quicker establishment, use 1 feet apart. Remember that these plants only grow 6 feet in diameter per season. So they're very low. It will take a long time for them to cover the whole ground if you plant them very far apart. There's also sod available for in some areas of the state for perennial peanut, so that it's perfect if you can afford that. But most importantly is the soil preparation. So for soil preparation, you want to lose at least the first 3 to 5 inches. If you can do more than that, will be better. But it needs to be very loose soil, because remember that compacted soils will slow down the growth of the perennial peanut. So soil preparation is key, but also not only for loosening the soil, but also for weed control. So unfortunately, we don't have many herbicides tested in ornamental perennial peanut, and it's something that I will try to address this year in my program to get more herbicides that we can use for our industry. But mainly, perennial peanut is a legume, so it tolerates Roundup up to 1 pint per acre. You can spray up to 1 pint per acre Roundup and you will not harm your perennial peanut. So that's one tool that you have for weed control. Also, in established lands, you can use a freehand 1.75G as a pre-emergent herbicide. It also won't hurt the perennial peanut, and that's a very good pre-emergent herbicide that you could use. So you have those 2 options. But also remember that when you plant perennial peanut, it's a broadleaf. So you will have to try to control all the broadleaf weeds before you have your perennial peanut. Use that selective grass herbicide won't be a problem, because perennial peanut is on the grass. So you have a tool to control grasses in perennial peanut, but controlling broadleaf weeds will be a challenge. So for soil preparation, I said loosen up that soil and then try to either go with a higher concentration of Roundup to kill everything, and then you can plant your perennial peanut. After perennial peanut is established, you can use 1 pint per acre to control any weed that might have growing in between the perennial peanut. You can use grass selective herbicide to control grasses, and you can use freehand as a pre-emergent. Now let's move to our new varieties. This is kind of exciting. That's part of the end part of my talk. But let's talk about the benefits first of the perennial peanut. So Rhizoma perennial peanut is drought tolerant. It's a full sun plant, attracts pollinator, fixes nitrogen as we talk. It's heat tolerant. It's a non-invasive plant because it does not produce seeds, and you can easily kill it with a high concentration of Roundup. It's free from diseases and also attracts wildlife. That attracts wildlife part is some aspect that some people will like, some people don't like. I'll say this: the fact that it attracts wildlife, it doesn't mean that the wildlife will eat your peanut and kill it. It resists grazing, so if you live wildlife, they will eat the perennial peanut and not gonna kill it. It's not gonna be like when deer eats hostas and just kills them. Perennial peanut that won't happen with the perennial peanut. If you don't want wildlife, I'll say, well, perennial peanut won't be for you, because as I say, it's very palatable for livestock, so they really do like it. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the cultivars in the market, and that's why we try to develop these new varieties. First of all, we have waxy leaf and pointy leaves, but they're mainly just green varieties that don't flower as much. And they're more like a population of plants that are called like that, so they haven't been tested for the performance in the landscape. We have Cowboy, that is a cultivar released by the University of Georgia. It's a good plant, but you cannot find it very easily in the market. You can identify Cowboy by the pointy leaves that this plant has. We have EcoTurf, widely available. Make sure that you are getting EcoTurf, because some people are selling high types as EcoTurf. So if you can find a certified producer of EcoTurf perennial peanut, that would be better. And here are our new varieties. So this one, I'm very sorry I cannot give you specific names at this point, but the patents have been filed, so you should be able to find these in the market at the end of this year. We have growers already growing these plants here in Florida, and also we're going to start some people growing this in Alabama, so they will be available. Just give us some time to get the patent file 100% approved so we can get your names. But this one is one we call 89. It has a very low grow habit, so 9 centimeters. That will be around 2 to 3 inches max. The flowers of orange, and is the variety with the largest flowers in the market. So what I mean by that, the small flower is EcoTurf, and the big flower is 89. That's how big. It's almost double the size of an EcoTurf flower. So it's very impressive. Our new variety is 23. Low growing habit. This is the variety that flowers the most, very profuse flowering. The flowers are yellow-orange, very long flowering period, and also matte flowers. 90 is very unique in the sense that it has waxy leaves, is very compact and dense, and is the only variety, you can see here the waxy leaf, that has yellow flowers. So we talk that only the Soloniferous type have yellow flowers, and none of the rhizoma types have yellow flowers. Well, we have a rhizoma type now that is 90 that has yellow flowers, and I think I have, yeah, here's a very picture of the yellow flower. So it's a bigger flower than the Soloniferous type, but has this same yellow beautiful color. And finally, we have 01. So the beauty of 01 is that it's a very compact and dense plant. What I mean by that is this tight, and that makes it very good at outcompeting weeds. This plant is super tight. It doesn't allow many sun to reach the ground, which it translates to very low weed incidence in this plant. So finishing up, keys to success when you're working with ornamental perennial peanut. Number one, cultivar. It's super important that when you're buying perennial peanut, you ask for the cultivar. We look at the differences. So if you find white stems, yellow flowers, don't buy it because it's a Soloniferous type. It won't perform very well in your garden. Look for rhizoma types, as I just said. Look for thin stems, orange flowers. That will be a good key to look for rhizoma. Also, you can just look at the roots. Just take a pot, take the plant out of the pot and look at the roots. If you find rhizomes, that's what you want. Soil preparation is key for weed control, and also prepare the soil for these rhizomes to grow. Patient. If you're not getting sod for your garden and they're just planting these plants 1 foot apart or 2 feet apart, be patient. It will take you a little while for them to cover the ground, but they will do it. And when they do, you'll be very happy that you planted perennial peanut. And maintenance. We talk about 3 mows a year. That's easily attainable and doable. So 1 after dormancy, 1 in July, and 1 in November. So with that, I'm going to end, and I think we have plenty of time for questions. So I'll be very happy to answer as much questions as you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leyton. for an incredible presentation on perennial peanuts. We just have a few questions in the Q&A section here. One of the first question is a two-part question. Considering perennial peanuts, if it is in a bed with other ornamentals that are irrigated roughly about 1 or 2 times per week, is there any room for overwatering? And the second part to that is, will it thrive in part sun?
Okay, so for the first part of the question, if your soil doesn't get wet all the time, so if the water doesn't stand in the soil, I think it will be fine. So if you have like drainage problems, that may cause problems for the perennial peanut. But if your drainage is okay, perennial peanut won't have a problem if you water it more regularly. For the partial shade, it resists partial shade. It just will grow slow and it won't flower as much. It won't tolerate 100% shade. It needs sun, but partial sun or partial shade, it'd be okay. Just be mindful that it will be slow growing and not flowering as much.
Thank you for that response. Now, the next question is, are perennial peanuts safe as a ground cover over septic drain fields?
Yeah, that won't be a problem. You can plant it over there as long as it's full sun.
Okay. Now, will iguanas devour the perennial peanuts, considering people who are coming from the South Florida regions who face the iguana problems?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm not familiar what iguanas eat. I think they can eat anything that you have them like at that, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Now, should we assume if we want to attract pollinators, we should never use herbicides for weed control?
That's not true. So weed control will only affect plants, so it won't affect the flower or the insects. The herbicides are not an insecticide, so they are safe for animals and insects. Especially the ones that I recommend, those are used and cleared for landscape and residential areas.
Thank you for that. Now, for weed control, this was just a comment, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking through the list here. Just another comment. Oh, could you address if and what perennial peanut might be appropriate for Florida Keys specifically?
Yeah, it will perform very well in the Florida Keys. I don't have hard data. We just started a trial in Homestead. So that will be south of Miami. And we should have data pretty soon about establishment and how they perform. But they love that climate. They love the hot, humid, warm climate that the Florida Keys have. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you for that, Dr. Leyton. Now, the next one is what is best for high traffic foot areas? FYI, this person is in Miami.
Okay. So for high traffic areas, you still want a rhizoma type. That would be your best candidate. Now, it will resist some foot traffic, but not very heavy foot traffic. Like it will need some time to recover. So when I say that is, we talk about that it was very good for as a grazing when you use it for hay because it can resist, but you need to realize that the cow will walk around. It won't stand on the same spot all the time. So if you have an area that it gets some foot traffic, it won't be a problem. Perennial will be fine. But if you have an area that will have constant foot traffic, that might affect the plant. I won't be 100% tolerant to that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leyton. And then the next question I think is a very important question. Someone is asking, can people with peanut allergies also have reactions to perennial peanut?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So the answer is no, because what people is allergic is to the peanut protein that is in the nuts. And that protein is not in the leaves or in the flowers. So what people is allergic is only on the peanut nut, and this plant won't produce seeds, so it won't produce peanut nuts. It only produce leaves and flowers.
Thank you for that. And then we're towards the end of our question list, but one of the final questions are there any common deficiencies that perennial peanuts experience? We have patches that are very yellow, they are alive, but have never really greened up. It's been a few years now. So this person is asking for possibilities as to why this is happening.
If it is yellowing, I will say that most likely is that you have some micronutrients deficiency. So try to fertilize with a fertilizer that has micronutrients. As I say, you don't need nitrogen, or you might need like a little bit. So that might help also too. But our soils in Florida are high in phosphorus, so you might need phosphorus for that. Usually is a micronutrient deficiency. So I'll say start with a fertilizer, like a slow release that has micronutrients, and see if that improve your perennial peanut.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leyton. Now, the last question, I'm going to group it into a two-part question to account for all of the similar questions here. But this question is, can you go over the herbicide practices again for established non-rhizome peanut to treat grassy and broadleaf weeds? And then they also want to know about the salt tolerance level in general.
Okay, I can go back to that slide. So for weed control, here. So for weed control, as I said, all perennial peanut is tolerant to 1 pint per acre of Roundup, so you can use that. If you have a herbicide that is only for grasses, you can use that, because perennial peanut is not a grass, it's a broadleaf plant. So 1 pint per acre Roundup to like a broadcast control, selective just for grass weeds, that would be fine. And as a pre-emergent freehand, it's pretty good as a pre-emergent herbicide. For the salt tolerance, I have not clear data about the salt tolerance of perennial peanut. I've heard people saying there is tolerant, but I don't have any hard data to say. It's only anecdotal information. So I'm not 100% sure if it'll be tolerant to high salinity levels.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leyton. And then this is the last question here that I would like to address. Would the replacement of turf grass with perennial peanut be worth considering for certain areas as a cost-saving measure?
Absolutely, yes. So areas where, for example, that you have turf grass right now, they are not very like used by people, that they only have like a static component. I think perennial peanut is the perfect substitute for that, especially for areas that you don't have to have the maintenance cost on those areas. So as we talk about, perennial peanut will only require 3 mowings a year. It doesn't require more than that. Maybe a little bit herbicide if you have high weed incidence in your area, but that will be it, and it will perform beautifully. It's a very nice alternative. Now, we have done some studies in mixing turf grass with perennial peanut. And I think maybe Dr. Kenworthy will talk a little bit about that. I'm not sure if he will, but I know that there is data that it is possible to mix both of them. The idea behind it is that the perennial peanut is a legume, so mixing turf grass with perennial peanut will reduce the amount of nitrogen that you need to input to that turf grass lawn, because the perennial peanut will provide the nitrogen. But I was talking with a researcher a couple weeks ago that was involved in the project, but they still mow it like 2 inches tall. So the mowing is very constant. If you wanted to replace 100% your turf with perennial peanut, you can use turfgrass, ecoturf, sorry. And that will be, like 4 inches, like 6 or 5 inches tall. Our varieties are way shorter than that, so you can wait a little bit and get the new varieties that they are very close to the ground. But yeah, perennial peanut, it's a good alternative for areas that you don't want to maintain or want to reduce costs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leynar. So with that, the last thought is, if someone is interested in referencing specific ornamental peanuts or ornamental perennial peanuts, how can they get in contact with you or anyone in your department?
Yeah, so that's my email. You can email me and I can get you information. The perennial peanut grower associations also have some resources for ornamental growers. But we do have growers almost in all the state of Florida. So get in contact with me and I can give you their contact, or go to the Perennial Peanut Grower Association and they will also have a link that says ornamental for the ornamental folks that grow perennial peanut, ornamental perennial peanut.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leyton, for a wonderful presentation and a segment on questions and answers. And thank you so much for the host and panelists, as well as everyone that were able to join this webinar on perennial or ornamental perennial peanuts. So with that, I ask you all to enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all for joining us today. You all have a blessed day.
Thank you. Bye.